I was going to push until I died. I had a partially collapsed lung in 2004. I had to race at the Olympics with. I swore after that race I would never race like that again. But it wouldn't have mattered how sick I got, how many shoulder surgeries I'd have to do to win an Olympic gold medal. It just meant the world to me. And I have no regrets about anything that I had to put in to achieve that.
Grant Hackett is one of the greatest swimmers this country has ever produced. 2 Olympic golds in the 1500 back-to-back, 10 world titles, and for a decade, simply unstoppable. Kieren Perkins, you really looked up to him when you were young, didn't you?
Yeah, posters of him up on my wall and had all of his best times for 200, 400, 800, 1500 for every age group.
This is like manifestation 101.
Yeah, and this guy really doesn't like me and he's kind of my hero. He's all of a sudden being critical of you in the media. He didn't talk to me much when we were on the team together for 4 years. Yeah, he didn't say many words. And I don't think he meant to be cold. I'll never forget after the Sydney Olympics when I beat him and he finished second, he said, "You deserve this." Follow whatever is meaningful to you. Do what you think is going to give you the most joy in terms of the outcome, and be willing to go through the most pain in the process for that outcome.
You sound like you've got an amazing willpower. How did you learn to do that, endure more pain? And you had a dark period. How did you navigate that, and how did you navigate the savageness of the Australian media?
Oh, how did I navigate it? Very poorly.
Grant Hackett, welcome to A Life of Greatness.
Thank you for having me.
When we think of you, we obviously think of the Olympian and the incredible swimmer that you are, but your life has evolved a lot since then.
It has.
Just talk us through what it is that you do now with yourself.
So now I'm a CEO of a top 200 company on the ASX. So it's called Generation Development Group. We've got 3 different businesses, father of 4 kids, married for the second time. Had 2 children out of that marriage, Eddie, who's 6, Olympia, who actually turns 3 tomorrow after filming or shooting this. And I would say probably more settled in my skin at age 46 than I was as a 20-year-old Olympian.
Yeah, that's incredible because, you know, what we find sometimes with a lot of athletes, and we will talk to this maybe a bit later, is that after they finish their career, they lose themselves a bit, right? Yeah. But from a young age, your dad always said to you that it was important that you had something else under your belt, and it wasn't just that you were a good swimmer.
Yeah. We always, had a bit of a saying, you retire to something, not from something as an athlete. And so, but I was always fascinated with business. So for me to move into the finance world and to go down that path felt very natural, but at the same time, you're almost interrupted by this professional sports career because it's right in the middle of when you're preparing for life.
Yeah.
You're sort of going through it as a teenager and then as a young sort of 20-year-old at the Olympic Games, and all of a sudden, financially, you're doing quite well at that level. And it's quite funny because a lot of your friends or peers aren't. They might be a silver or bronze medalist at the Olympics or mightn't be as consistent in performance, therefore they don't get sponsors. And, so they're working really hard on their careers outside of sport, but you see the ones that or are high profile, they're often doing quite well. And I think that's the big problem is if you financially didn't do too well out of your career, you're all of a sudden using all those skills and expertise as an athlete that got you to maybe an Olympics or a World Championships, but you've got to go out in the real world and make it. And it's often enough I've seen a lot of my peers that are almost at that second tier of performance, but still got to a very elite level that have done incredibly well. But it's often enough we see a lot of athletes that have done exceptionally well, who we all know, who have all been paid the big sponsorship dollars that don't do terribly well afterwards or have this period of flux on their transition because they don't need to go to anywhere else and almost not forced to go anywhere else. And so I think earning a little bit too much money for some athletes through their career can be a problem into that next phase of their life because they don't have to get on with it as quick.
It's interesting because we see quite a bit with footy players as well, right? Where they earn such a huge salary from a young age. And then their footy career ends and they're not very old and they don't have the skills to be able to go and do another job. Yeah. So then from a mindset perspective, they really suffer.
It's hard to watch, and often enough I've mentored a lot of athletes. I've had a lot of everywhere from football players across each of the codes through to, Olympians come to me to ask for help because they've seen that I've been through my ups and downs, and they often want a bit of help and guidance through that. And it's funny, some really want that help and they recognize that the bubble of sport that they're in right now will end. And then there's others where you feel like you're almost preaching because the information you can see that you're sharing is not really hitting the mark because they don't get it yet. They don't get it that there's going to be this time where that professional football team is going to pull over the bus and you're going to get off and you're going to be on your own. And you're going to be out of that bubble where someone's carrying your bags maybe into the sports stadium, telling how good you are after the win after that game or premiership or grand final, whatever it might be. And you're going to have to fend a little bit for yourself. And it's until I think the penny drops that a lot of athletes get, hey, I might actually have to do something else now. And I feel for athletes that are almost blindsided by that. I was fortunate enough, you made that point around my dad and good parenting, both my mum and dad being great. I knew that I had to get on with life afterwards. 50 years is a long time to sit in the exit lounge, so to speak. And I really wanted other things for myself besides a life in sport. And I wanted that well and truly before I became well known out of the sport of swimming. So, yeah, I really like to help people, but as we say, you can only help people who want to be helped. And sometimes that takes a few hard lessons before you get there.
You weren't always a fan of swimming. Like, you got into it, but it wasn't like something that you wanted to do from age 4 and that was the only thing that you wanted to do. So talk to us a little bit about the younger years and what led you to start a swimming career.
Yeah, swimming definitely wasn't the first choice. I was good at it, but it wasn't like it was the be-all, end-all for me. I really loved surf lifesaving. I really loved the Ironman. I know people associate that with triathlon. For me, the first Ironman was the actual Ironman, the Uncle Toby's Super Series, even the Nutri-Grain series. I looked up to Trevor Hendy. I was doing nippers up in, I was getting brought up on the Gold Coast in Queensland. So, of course, I was in a surf club. So for me, but that was such a golden era of that sport. And I loved that sport. My brother did it for 8 years and I really admired him and what he was doing. I was also playing football. So again, another sport that was a lot of fun, plenty of teammates. But for me, swimming was probably ranked second or third in that lineup for a long time. And I was doing well in all of these sports. But really the defining moment was when Sydney got the Olympics. And I thought to myself, hey, I can be good at a lot of sports, but I can really only be elite at one. And if I want to go to the Olympics, there's only one out of those 3 that I will actually be able to go to the Olympics for. So therefore, it was really a no-brainer. And it was funny, as soon as I made that decision, and it was great having the Olympics as that long-term goal, but I just turned off the other 2 sports. And I did fall in love with swimming from that point onwards.
Really?
And because I really studied it.
Yeah.
And I think studying it, when I looked at the 1500 meter freestyle, which was my race, I looked at what, not just Kieren Perkins at the time was doing, but also Daniel Kowalski was alongside him, Glenn Hausman before that, Stephen Holland before that, John Conrads, Murray Rose, Andrew Boy Charlton. It was our most gold medaled event ever out of any sport, male or female, at the Olympic Games. I'm not sure if that's still the case today, but it certainly was back then. Kieren Perkins was breaking world record after world record, and he really put swimming back on the map in this country. So, yeah, there was just a lot of things to love, and there was so much excitement about the Sydney Olympics too. And I think for me, the Olympics was the thing I was probably really in love with, and swimming was almost the vehicle to get me there and have an opportunity to win an Olympic gold medal, which, to be honest, not only was it to go to the Olympics, but it was to win too.
Because there's one thing to go like, oh, the Olympics is good, I'd love to be a swimmer, and then actually be good enough to, be able to do that. How did it get from like wanting to do that to be able to be training at the level that allows you to actually get into the games?
Yeah, it's a good question. And probably when I made that decision, everyone thinks, I was probably winning everything at that point in time, but I actually wasn't in swimming.
Yeah.
I was very good. I could place at state titles. I, wasn't even old enough to compete at national age at that point in time. And I think, I'm not sure where the self-belief came from. I just found in the other sports, whenever I focused on what I wanted to do and I did the preparation around it, I knew I could be successful. And I'm not sure where I built that confidence from. It was probably over years of being at sport and being in a really competitive nipper team as well, that we went on to, not only we were the best in our sort of local region, we were the best in the state, then we were the best nationally, just coming from that one surf club. So I think all the people I was around there through those formative years, and then to win national titles at age 10 in that sport, and I learned some hard lessons along the way around preparation. I remember the following year at nationals for that sport, where I was selected on the state team, I did the surf race and I didn't even make it out the back. It was actually at Anglesea in Victoria, really big surf. And obviously I didn't get a place. And I really knew coming into that national titles, I had not done the work. And I've never, ever forgotten that lesson. I've carried that with me everywhere. So when I was 12 and 13 at the same national titles, I won by a long, long way. And I just knew it was about the preparation. And I think I probably thought that about swimming too. I thought if I did the work, if I hit the times in training and the preparation was right, I could probably win. And I think that's really what I drew upon.
You sound like you've got an amazing willpower. Like you want something and you're like, all right, I'm going to go get this. Obviously you have the skill to be able to get there too. But the fact that you were studying the other swimmers, it's probably a lot more than what others were doing. And it's like you knew from a young age how to get into this zone of wanting something and that being your target focus.
Yeah. You could probably talk to my wife about that. It's
a great gift.
Yeah, it probably is my gift. I probably have never said that when everyone's asked, what's your gift? I've always said hard work. So that's probably the same thing. Yeah.
Knowing what you want and doing whatever you can to get there.
Yeah. I guess I am pretty sure on my goals and what I want to achieve. And I write them down still to this day and I put them up, and I don't get every single one of them, but I always think if I've missed one, how am I going to, get on the track back to, the pathway to achieving that. So yeah, that is right. And I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like if you do the work and the preparation and you understand it, like I always find breaking things down. And I think I've naturally done that. So again, probably going back to studying those athletes or their times even. Like I could tell you all the splits of Kieren Perkins' 400-meter world record at the 94 World Championships, or his 1,500-meter world record 6 weeks before that at the 94 Commonwealth Games in Victoria, Canada. Like I could tell you every split of the 100 for 15-100. So yeah, it's, if you understand something, you're probably more likely to be able to hit that target.
And also it's so true. Like for me, in preparation for any interview I do, I obviously go in and study and learn as much about the person as I can. When I was early on in my days in interviewing, I was studying the other interviewers that I love, like Oprah, Andrew Denton, like the creme de la creme, Louis Theroux. And I was watching their techniques. Obviously, you do your own thing, but you look at what made the best people the best. And I remember there's a beautiful saying where it's like, to want to be on a certain path, you have to look at someone who is done it before you and done it really well, and they've illuminated that path for you. So for you, that was Kieren Perkins, which ironically ended up being someone that you raced against for many, many years.
Yeah.
But you really looked up to him when you were young, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. It's quite funny because he was my brother's biggest rival when they were super young.
Yeah.
Because my brother used to do swimming 6.5 years older than me, similar to Kieran's age gap with me. So yeah, I kind of didn't like him back then, and then he became this great hero, and then I really respected what he was achieving and doing in the sport. And then all of a sudden, you're becoming a guy who's a villain in the household to a hero. So then he didn't really like me because I was kind of coming on to, I think, his patch. And that was very difficult because he didn't talk to me much when we were on the team together for 4 years. Yeah, he didn't say many words. And I was like, this guy really doesn't like me. And he was kind of my hero. Kind of had posters of him up on my wall and had all of his best times for 200, 400, 800, 1,500 for every age group that I was trying to meet on my wall, trying to meet them, or sort of emulate them or beat them every single year.
This is like manifestation 101.
Yeah, and Yeah, I got 90% of those times, and then all of a sudden you're on a team with him, and he's all of a sudden being critical of you in the media. He's kind of not engaging with you in any sort of way. And
How old were you?
look, when I won world championships, I was 16, so I was
Yeah.
very
To
young.
give context to people listening, you were very young.
Yeah.
So when someone doesn't talk to you, you don't have like we have as an adult going, oh, they're probably jealous, because I'm
Having a
really
bad
becoming
day.
very good. You're a 16-year-old with your idol thinking, oh, he's ignoring me, and that's can be uncomfortable.
And I think it worked probably with him and other rivals previously too, because, and I don't think he meant to be cold. I think there was a part of him that, I don't know, maybe he thought giving away too much talking to his competitors, or that wasn't a natural thing for him back then. Like, I'm really good friends with him now, and we'll catch up and we'll have lunch, and we have a really healthy respect for one another. I'll never forget after the Sydney Olympics when I beat him and he finished second, he said, "You deserve this," straight after the race. So like that was a testament to him and his character, and appreciating even in defeat, you could see him conduct himself like that. But yeah, it was unsettling in those years. And again, and this was my dad, he said to me, he said, "Look, this guy's done everything in the sport. You haven't achieved what you want to yet. You show him great respect. You're the younger one coming through. So it doesn't matter what he says, you show him the respect for what he's done and he's achieved." And I just took that. And I think that was probably the defining boundaries of that. All right, he's going to be like that, but this is the way I'm going to be. And so I was pretty sure about how I was going to conduct myself. And also the end of that sentence is, and everything he's saying, use it to beat him. So you can funnel negative and positive any way which you want to, but just make sure it works for your performance and what you're trying to drive for yourself.
Your dad sounds like such a wise man. He was a police officer.
He was a detective.
Yeah.
Solved many murders. So a very, very smart man. Dad's not one to talk often, or, sort of. So when he does speak, and it's not to say like I've, one-on-one conversations with Dad all the time, but he was not a sort of out there type of guy, or, showy, or, he was just very smart, very measured and considered as an individual. And so you knew when Dad said something, it was coming from a place that was well thought out, and he was a very intelligent man. So it was, and often enough when he gave that advice, it sticks with you because it's good advice. And so, there's probably a lot of things, even though I've probably had 1,000 more conversations with my mum because we talk every day.
Aww.
But with Dad, we don't talk every day. We still talk, have one-on-ones. I go up to Queensland, and hang out with them at home. But, when you exchange dialogue with him, it can be pretty powerful at times.
I've interviewed a couple of swimmers over my career, and I always feel for their parents in the fact that, for my very short-lived swimming career, which was just being in the swimming squad at school, having to get up at the crack of dawn, kind of like the rowers, which I also did for just a term, and them having to take you, right?
Yeah.
And your career obviously spanned a longer period of time than my short-lived one. Was it your mum or your dad that was taking you there and back most mornings?
Oh, it was a mixture of both, to be honest, because both mum and dad were working, and mum was part-time when we were growing up. But, you realize when you become a parent, or, you kind of look back on it and you think, geez, 4:45, that's not normal for Dad to be shaking your leg in the morning to wake up to get going. And, they did it a lot with my brother. And like I said, he was quite a bit older than me and an extremely talented athlete. And I think when they got to me, they were like, I remember coming back from state titles and breaking the national record. I think I was 14 for the 400-meter freestyle, and Dad saying, and they thought I was asleep in the back. And he goes to my mum, "Oh, we did it with his brother, so I guess we better do it with him." And I was like, it was almost like a sigh. I was like, "Oh, that sounds really encouraging." And I think I yelled at, "I'm not asleep." And so you don't realize the stress that can put on, and it's expensive. You got to go to all these meets. Like we never.
They have to pay.
They have to pay,
Jeez.
And so it's not an easy thing when you look back on it. But they didn't make it look hard or like it was onerous in any way. It was kind of like we did a lot of sport. We were pretty good at it. So it was just part of the way we lived.
And what was the moment where you knew that you were going to be part of the Olympic team? How did that play out?
I think for me, it was funny because when I was 15, I was at the Olympic trials for the 96 Olympics, and I made pretty much all the finals for all my main events there, but I wasn't expecting to go. And I broke all the national records for my age, so it was a really successful meet. But that was the last time I actually lost the 1500 meter freestyle for the next 11 years. So I almost think if I was another 6 to 12 months away from that, I might have had an opportunity to swim at those games. But for me, once I made the national team in December of 96 to go to World Short Course, I think from there I always knew I could do it. But with the sport of swimming, it is very cutthroat. You get one Olympic trials, top 2 A qualifying time, and if you don't do that, we'll see you in 4 years' time. And so, I still had to qualify for the team like everybody else, but that wasn't the difficult part. The difficult part was going, okay, I've made the team. That's one part of the equation, and that feels like the easy part. The hard part is now going to an Olympics in your own backyard, dealing with the expectation of being ranked number 1 in the world for 4 years straight, and then everybody expecting you to win. And I think for me, that was more the confronting part, particularly when I didn't do as well in my shorter races. Still made finals, didn't medal where I probably should have medaled in those shorter races. Got a gold in the 4x2, but it was the individual event that I really wanted to win at those games, and obviously the 1500 meter freestyle was my pet race. So, and then Kieren all of a sudden does the fastest time in his heat swim that he's done in 6 years since he broke the world record.
Wow!
Like literally the fastest time, except for that of what he did to win 1996 in Atlanta from lane 8.
Yeah.
Which he was only 2 seconds slower than in his heat swim. So
I love that you remember what lane he swam in. It wasn't even you, it was him.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
It's funny. It's firmly imprinted on my long-term memory, I think, or scarred, whichever one it is. But yeah, so he was swimming the best he'd ever swum since he can remember. And
how old was he?
He would have been 27, I think, at that time. So I think his birthday was just in August.
A bit older than you.
Yeah. So I just turned 20.
Yeah.
And yeah, he would have been, Olympics were in September. I think his birthday is in August. So he would have been 27 because 20, my brothers, would have been 27 in December that year. So that's right. And yeah, so big age gap. And he was really in his last Olympics going to 3, which was pretty incredible. There wasn't these multi-Olympic athletes. Like we see a lot more of that today. It's been a lot more professionalized. Recovery's better. I think longevity is better in sport now. But back then, for him to go to 3 games in a distance event where you tear apart your body, like you do 8 kilometers in the morning, 8 kilometers at night. You train 6 days a week. Yeah, like it is. You think of your shoulder rotations you do in 8 kilometers of a swimming pool twice a day under the stress of that speed too that you're doing it at.
Why was that? You said earlier on that was my race. The 1500 became the one that you wanted, and obviously you realized you were good at. But is it because you're tall? Like, is there a certain, how like the long distance runners have a certain like look to them?
Yeah.
Why was that so important, that race,
I think I fell in love with that one probably before the other races.
Yeah.
Like I love the 800 meter freestyle. If you probably asked me a few years later, what's your favorite race? It would be the 800 because I was good at the shorter events. Like I was always sort of thereabouts with Thorpe in the 400, and then the 200, I still held the world record in that at one stage. So I had a good speed, but I had this endurance as well. So the 800 was almost the perfect race. That's now at the Olympics, but it wasn't whilst I was competing. And so, yeah, the 1500, I felt like I was good at it. I probably broke more national records in that one. So you sort of tilt towards, to your point, what you're good at. It had this great history with Kieren at the time and all of the athletes that were before him. And I don't know, like it was something that I felt I just really enjoyed almost the suffering and the pain that came with it. It was like I knew when it got really hard, I could absorb more pain than the others. And I think for me, that's something I could do in training, and I knew that would transfer to racing, even on a bad day. And I think that's probably why I spent a decade probably winning that race, because I had that mentality. So
how did you learn to do that, endure more pain?
um,
What is the mindset behind that?
I had a race once when I was younger. I was about 14, where I actually faded quite badly. It wasn't actually an 800-meter freestyle. I think it was just a regional meet, but it was up in the Chandler swimming pool in Brisbane. And I remember thinking, God, I kind of gave up to the pain in that race a little bit, like too easy. And I think I just promised myself if I ever felt like that again, I was going to push until I died. That's kind of my mentality around that. And so I made sure I trained to be able to push through the pain all the time, absorb that pain and continue to push through it. And then I got into a race when I was 15, and the same thing happened again. Admittedly, in that earlier race that I alluded to, I went out a little bit too hard for my ability, and I did the same thing in this 1500, but I didn't let it go. I held on to it, and I did a personal best time, and I thought, okay, good. I knew I could do that moving forward then. So I think it was a confidence thing in the middle of a race to be able to do that, but I just knew how tough that would be. And I liked that about the 1500, how strong you had to be through it. It was a bit more strategy in that race. There was just a little bit more to it. And I just liked all those different elements.
That's an amazing ability for an athlete to be able to endure enough pain that they know that they're going to be better than their competitors to an extent, you know. How do you know that you're not going to injure yourself?
Oh, you don't. And I think I was probably sick more times in my career than most other athletes, because I did push myself too much when I probably shouldn't have. I had a partially collapsed lung in 2004 I had to race at the Olympics with. I swore after that race I would never race like that again, because it was the wrong sort of pain to be pushing through. I've had shoulder surgery, other surgeries. I'm allergic to dust, so I'd always get my nose cauterized every 6 months. So that's basically putting a hot rod, an ENT surgeon would, up my nose to stop the sensitivity so I wouldn't get sinusitis all the time. So yeah, it's really hard to beat someone that's willing to do anything to be able to win an event or a race. And
Incredible.
I just wanted to be that guy, I guess.
Wow. You spoke earlier about having, the Australian country basically all wanting you to win, as we do for any athletes that we love. And swimming is such an important part of the Australian culture, and it's a sport we've always been good at, right? Why do you think we're always good at it? I assume it's because a lot of us, we grow up around pools, which a lot of other countries might not. We've got a lot of land here. It's easier to have a pool here than it is, in New York.
Yeah.
Why do you think that the Aussies look at swimming as being such an important sport for them when it comes to the Olympics?
It's been a big part of our lifestyle here. I mean, we're a summer country, so to speak, and
we don't feel like that today.
Yeah, well,
Not
we're based
in
in Melbourne like we are.
Yeah.
So,
but yes, no, I agree with you.
It's and you're right. Like, we do have a lot of pools. I think Great Britain had 7 Olympic pools. When we had, I remember training on the Gold Coast, thinking we've got 7 on the Gold Coast. I think so.
Yeah.
It's it is a big part of our lifestyle. It's been a big part of who we are at the Olympic Games, and I think, as much as we say, sport shouldn't be as big a focus as it is in this nation, it's an important thing to this nation, and it goes into our psyche, our identity of who we are on the international stage as well. And I think we're proud of that, and swimming's been an element of that, and the Olympics has been a big part of that. I remember, I think it was Peter Costello at the time. It would have been 2005. We were at the National Sporting Awards, and he was the then federal treasurer of the country at the time. And he said, I think we were like 50-something in population, 11th in the economies in the world, but we're number 5 in sport at the Olympics. And I thought that was a really good way of positioning who we are on the international stage. And yeah, I think we've always done well in swimming, and there's that expectation there. And a lot of Australians live on the coastline, so learn to swim is a big part of who we are, and you sort of progress from there. And we've also had so many good athletes to look up to, and that's a big part of sport. I think any sport we're successful in, if you've had athletes before you, I've sat here and focused a lot on Kieren Perkins because I was looking up to him and thinking, wow, he can do that. Maybe I can do that. And I think that's with any sport here, and swimming's just been one of those ones that's been a bit of a constant for us.
And so the 2000 Sydney Olympics, you go into it. How did you feel? You were a bit sick going into that Olympics as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was, I had Epstein-Barr syndrome in that one. So again, didn't tell anybody about it, but my coach, he didn't even tell me about it. I got it from a blood test when I was actually on the team. And it was weird because he changed my training to remove a fair bit of the quality work, which is the shorter distance, sort of more explosive, powerful work that you would do, and just really focused on the endurance work, which I thought was a bit weird, but I kind of, you follow your coach and you're very close to them. So you naturally just sort of fall in line about what you're doing. But yeah, it was really because I wasn't 100% healthy for that. So I didn't really know that. I knew in my shorter races I wasn't doing as well and I wasn't hitting the times that I needed to, but my endurance work was pretty good. So I still had that sort of confidence going in. But when you're going into an Olympic Games, it's a different sort of pressure. The scarcity of the Olympics is what makes it special, that once every 4 years. As I say, you can break a world record any day of the week, but the Olympics, you get an opportunity once every 4 years. If you're not there that day, no one cares that you've had a bad day or a sore throat or a headache or whatever put you off your race, that you didn't get the gold medal or the medal that you were hoping for. There's 8 years in between opportunities. So that's what makes it special. So yeah, I knew things weren't right, but at the same time, I still had a very confident and positive headspace. And yeah, I probably knew I was just going to throw everything at it regardless.
Yeah. So the 1500, that race, I actually watched it on YouTube just to familiarise myself with it. And my God, you were leading by quite a bit. So you didn't just win that race, you won it extremely well. But talk to us about how you felt, when you were on the blocks that day and you had Kieren Perkins right next to you. I'm assuming your parents were watching in the crowd, and you basically had the weight of all Australia wanting you to win, or at least wanting you or Kieren to win.
Yeah, they would have taken either one of us. So.
Yeah.
It was really funny. I remember I wanted to get an early lead on Kieren because I knew I still had a little bit more speed in that early stage of the race, but I knew if it wasn't big enough, you were either going to do one of two things. If you don't break them enough, they'll start to feel good when they start to really win, and they'll build confidence in the back end of the race. But if you break them enough in the first half or even the first 1,000 meters of a race, which seems like a long time, but there's a lot that can happen in that last third of a 1500, you pretty much have got it. And so for me, I remember getting through that first 100 meters because my thoughts on the block, just to answer that question, was like, I just think, you can do it, you want to do it, you're going to do it. That's what I was telling myself before that race. And when I get on the block, the only thing I'm thinking of is gun, gun, gun. I have one thing in my mind, and that is the next step of what I need to do in order to get to the next step after that. And that is hearing that starter's gun and just getting the best start possible. So that's what I focus on when I'm standing up there. And you really can't see anything else. Like, you've got a crowd, like that crowd was amazing in an indoor stadium. There's 20,000 people around a little 50-meter pool. And I got that early lead in the first 100 meters, and I thought that was a bit easier than what I thought. And then I got out to the 300-meter mark. I thought, okay, I've got you by probably a body length and a half. I haven't seen that race in a very long time, but and then I remember being at the 1,000-meter mark, and I was like, I'm not going to let this go now. And then 300 meters to go, I was hurting so bad. I was in so much pain. And I was just counting down. And I remember the last 25 meters of that race, and I put my head up a little bit. And because, you normally got your head straight down on the black line and you're just technically doing everything to keep in the rhythm. And I thought, I look up, I can see the yellow touchpad. And I thought, I'm going to become Olympic champion. And then I had this next thought where I was like, what happens if there's someone in lane 8 that I haven't seen? Like, it seriously was that quick, because people often ask me, can you see across all the lanes? I'm like, no, you can't. Particularly, I was in lane 3 in that race and Kieren was in lane 4. And I touched the wall, and you can see me after that race. If you ever look again, I look up at the diving board end just to make sure that I had number one beside my name before I actually celebrate.
Wow.
So I thought, I've just got to make sure, because I had that afterthought. And then, yes, I was. Funnily enough, the guy who finished third was in lane 8. So who broke the American record that day, a guy named Chris Thompson, I think it was, in lane 8. So yeah, for me, there was so many different emotions that I went through in the lead up to that Olympics, during the week of the swimming of the Olympics, you know, starting out that week and watching the guys win the 4x1 and then Thorpe in the 400. Then all of a sudden our team sort of, it didn't fall apart, but we expected Thorpe to win the 200, and Peter Van den Hoogenband won the 200, and then Klimmy on the 100 fly, and then I think Lars Frölander from Sweden won the 100 fly. So we had this, it is just so up and down, like your confidence is up and then you're thinking, wow. And it's funny, as a team, we generate so much from each other on the swim team, and we support each other a lot. So when you see your, I guess, fellow team members going through these ups and downs through that week, you kind of feel it with them, because the preparation and work that has gone into that opportunity.
Who was your best mate on the team?
Probably Klimmy and Thorpe. I probably spent the most time with them, roomed with both of them on several occasions. Like if we had a room of three of us, it would always be the three of us together. We always looked up to Klimmy because Klimmy's probably 3 years older than me. He's probably 5 years older than Ian. So, we always looked up to Michael because he was kind of doing amazing things just before we came on the scene, and we were just two young kids. We were just idiots. So, so nothing worried us. And it was so funny because Thorpe and I were really focused on, like, I knew all my times and what I had to hit. Thorpe, I don't think he had a clue. He just would go super fast at everything he did. So it didn't matter because he was kind of rewriting every record book known to mankind. But Klimmy was so professional. Like, he would document every one of his training sessions, his stroke rate, his room.
Really?
He would make the room neat. Yeah, like this guy was just a professional. So I feel like I learned a lot of Klimmy. Like I roomed with him for 5 or 6 years, and I remember coming back to the room at the 2001 World Championships in Japan in Fukuoka, and I was just a young kid, and I said, geez, how good's housekeeping here? Like, I leave this crap everywhere. And I come back, and even the teddies that I was winning from the medals I was getting through that meet were like stacked up neatly against each other. He goes, you idiot. That's not housekeeping. That's me doing all of this. I was
Bless him.
But that was him. He was so structured and organized. And I feel like, you learn so much of all the different athletes. Like, it's almost like Ian was a guy who just went by feel. Like, he didn't need to know times. He didn't need to know too much detail. He could just do it. Where Klimmy was like a guy who was probably nowhere near that level of natural talent, had plenty, don't get me wrong, but he was more done through structure, professionalism, discipline at every single level. And so you really see the different methodologies of what makes these guys become world champions, which they both did.
Are you still mates with them?
Yeah, we still talk and share stuff. Obviously, Klimmy's been through his health battle. And
how's that affected you to see him go through basically hell and back?
Oh God, I think it's hard for me, but I can't imagine what it's like for him.
Yeah.
Like, it was really tough because he didn't tell anyone for such a long time, and he told his circle first, which was, I don't know, probably 18 months into everything that he went through there. And I think that was probably the first part of the healing process for him. So yeah, that was confronting. Yeah, I struggled watching it, actually. So, because he sent me videos of him walking or not walking and stuff.
Because you've been with him when he's been at his best,
Yeah.
and not many people get to use their body like you guys have used yours. And then, I mean, he's been on this podcast, spoken very openly. And then, he walked in on, like with a cane.
Yeah, and the thing was too, his physicality was him. That was like, so, I was never a ripped athlete or anything like that.
Oh, I saw you on the YouTube video. You look pretty ripped.
But not compared to guys like him. Like, seriously, I had 3 abs at my best. These guys had like abs within their abs. And Klimmy was like big, physically imposing.
Yeah.
he had this bald head, and, just his stature it was a big part of his identity. And I always knew that. So I think when I watched those videos, I was walking through the park. I was living in East Melbourne at the time, and I was walking through Fitzroy Gardens, and I got tears in my eyes. I was like, man, this is not Klimmy. And I thought to myself, I don't know how he felt. So, yeah, and you just want to support him and do anything you can. I mean, the guys we can go for months without talking, and it's the same with Thorpe, but it's like we went to war together. So there's this bond there. So
Beautiful.
If a person needs one another, or, whatever you need to do to support someone, if they say, hey, can you do this? You go, of course I can. Like you're just there for each other. And, I went through my ups and downs, and it was the same thing then. So I think no matter what, with that, it's almost like, I feel like when you finish sport, it's like finishing high school. Everybody goes in their different directions and does their thing. But, there's always a group of people that you stay connected with. And that's definitely been those guys. And, I've had other roommates and other people that I've, shared many awesome experiences with on that team. But I feel like the nucleus of all of that came from that with those guys. And, Ian and I basically came through on the first set of teams together as well, and we were race. It was really weird because we were like fierce rivals in the 400, the 800, the 200 meter freestyle, but it was really weird because we would just race, and the rivalry would be there, and then we'd get out, and we were friends, and it was really easy.
It's beautiful.
People always asked me, geez, that must have been hard. And it's like, yeah, I want to beat him, but like, he's my friend.
Yeah.
So we're going to be friends, and we're going to be friends, but we're going to race as hard as we can. And it was a healthy respect there. And I really enjoyed that. So yeah, that bond between all of us is pretty powerful. And yeah, there's not much you wouldn't do for them.
Yeah, you're really lucky to have that. You were supposed to race in you mentioned it before, I think it was the 4x100 relay.
4x2.
4x200. Yeah. And you were unwell and you didn't qualify, and that was not an easy time for you.
No, that was difficult because I'd missed out on relays before, and I promised that would never happen again. And so, I was a heat swimmer. And it's funnily enough, I made the 200 meter freestyle final at the Olympic Games, but not the top 4 of my own nation for the final. And so it was a really difficult thing to digest. And you get the gold medal because you're part of the team, but I wasn't part of the final team. And so I think that was, as much as I reflected on that as I'll never not be a part of that team again, and I'll make sure of it this time. And, for the rest of my career, I made every single one of those. But it almost helped me for my 1500 because it probably created a steeliness and determination that I probably hadn't encountered before, to beat someone like Kieren, who'd all of a sudden come back to swimming extremely quick. And, we hadn't seen that Kieren Perkins in a very long time. And all of a sudden I was up against him. And I think going through, we all go through hurt and painful situations in life. And that was just one. In that week, I had to turn around from a very painful, difficult situation into something that was going to drive me in order to win an Olympic gold medal. And, any Olympian will tell you that they would trade 1,000 relay gold medals for one individual gold medal. And swimming is certainly no different. And so for me, I was probably lucky enough to have the disappointment there, but to probably get the outcome that I was really there for at those Olympics.
Was winning that race in Sydney one of your best moments of your career, or was there one that stands out?
It definitely. I mean, if you chose like a situation as that 13-year-old boy or 14-year-old boy that I was when Sydney got the Olympics, and if someone said, you're going to be racing your hero whose times are up on your wall right now at the Olympics, who's going for 3 Olympic gold medals, who's trying to do be the first male ever to do that in the same event, emulate what Dawn Fraser has only done before you, and then you're going to go in there not beaten for 4 years straight and be side by side against your, hero turned rival, or rival, hero, rival, in our household anyway, and then win that Olympic Games in front of your home crowd, which the Olympics haven't been here since 1956. in this country, that is probably a setting that you just couldn't imagine in your wildest dreams. And I had that situation. So I definitely reflect upon that as probably the best, if not, one of the top 2 or 3 highlights of my career. The other one that I probably really enjoyed just as much was Kieren's world record, as you can tell, is firmly etched in my memory. So
Yep.
I've been trying to break it for a long time. Like I'd spent probably 5 years of my career and I still hadn't gotten it. I'd gotten very close. I was the second fastest of all time, but I wasn't the world record holder. So I'd won everything and I won all the gold medals, but I hadn't got the world record. So when
What was his time?
His time was 14 minutes 41.66. So, and he'd taken that mark from 14 minutes 50, which Jörg Hoffmann beat him, a German, in the World Championships. I think it was 91. He'd lowered it 3 times. I think he went 14 minutes 48, 40 minutes 43 at the Barcelona Olympics in 92. Then in 94, he went 40 minutes 41. And I had 40 minutes 45 was my best time. So I hadn't quite got there. And yet I'd been faster in the shorter events than him, but not that one. Anyway, I eventually broke it at the World Championships in 2001 by 7 seconds. So I went 14 minutes 34. And it was funny, I joked around with my physio before the race he goes, why don't you just go 14 minutes 35? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. And we sort of laughed. And I said, seriously, I think I can get under 1440. And I thought I was going to see a 1438, 1439. And so when I turned around and saw 1434, again, I don't know, maybe I do have a lack of confidence somewhere because I was like, is that someone else turning down the other end? Because I was so far ahead of the rest of the field at those world champs. I wasn't sure if that was the other competitors actually turning and their split times coming up down the other end. And then, probably I've got stigmatism, so I probably needed glasses back then. And I just carefully looked across and I saw that. And that was a pretty wild moment because he was in the commentary box actually commentating the race. So
Really?
yeah, so I got to see him afterwards. And again, he was super gracious and really, really good about it. So, and I guess if you're going to have your world record broken, you might as well have it smashed because then you're like, it's not like they did it by 100th of a second.
Did you listen back to him commentating it?
I did. It was, yeah. I don't know. I felt like he was...
He's about to break my world record.
yeah. I thought it felt like he was genuinely happy, but maybe that's me tricking myself. But I sort of, it's funny. I've never watched that whole race though.
Really?
I don't know why. I think you would probably get this from a lot of athletes. I don't think they would watch their whole grand final. Or you just don't. You kind of move forward to the next thing because there's always the next goal when it comes to sport. And so I've seen the commentary for probably the last 100 meters, but I don't think I've never watched the full race, to be honest.
And then you obviously won a lot of other medals in different games and did. Achieved a lot of things. And you took a break for a period of time and then decided to come back. Talk to us a little bit about that period.
It was funny. I was retired from swimming and there was no plan on coming back to it whatsoever. So, for me, I'd been in banking and finance for 7 years at that point in time. Hadn't effectively swum any laps really in 7 years. Maybe of a peanut-shaped pool in a backyard. That's about it. And it was funny. I'd been through, divorce and wanted to have a bit of time off and just get myself back to neutral. And I thought I just really want to get fit again too, because that sort of career was very consuming, which it is today. And I feel like, I asked my old coach. I said, "Look, do you mind if I do some laps with the squad?" And I was doing that, and then 3 weeks in, he's like, "You can still do this." And I was like, "Yeah, I can." I think I was 34. And then, 6 months later, they had the trials for the world champs, and I made the national team. I was the oldest person ever to make a national Australian swim team. I was 35 going to the world championships. And then I didn't really want to go on after that. It was really funny because everyone thought it was a comeback and I'd never planned to come back. I actually got fit and then my competitive nature took over to see how well can I do this now? Could I do that? And then everyone started obsessing about making the Olympics at age 36, again, super old for the context of swimming. And my heart wasn't in the next 12 months like it was the previous 12 months. The previous 12 months was the challenge to see if I could get back to making a team. And once I'd done that, I felt like I'd sort of ticked that box because I wasn't really there for anything else besides probably just trying to enjoy the sport, which I was so goal orientated through really the 12 years before that, or prior to that being on the national team, that I think I just wanted to enjoy swimming for swimming, which I did a lot more, particularly in that 6 months where I just was getting fit again.
The media can be your best friend, and then it can be your enemy as well. And Aussies, we're known for allowing the underdog to sort of come up, and we hail them and look upon them as being such wonderful figures. But if anything goes wrong, then we're the first to kind of slam them as well. Yeah. And you had a dark period. How did you navigate that, and how did you navigate the savageness of the Australian media?
Oh, how did I navigate it? Very poorly for a long time. I think for me, I'd always had this will to push through everything. You used that word before, and that was definitely a strong driver for me. And I thought it was the same through that period of my life, because I went through, a very public divorce. I found it extremely difficult with all of the adverse media that came against me, and all the innuendo, speculation, and mistruths that are told about you. You can handle the truth, but when people are writing stuff about you that's not true, that's very difficult to digest. And, I sort of was missing, the twins from that first marriage so much, and not spending the time that I wanted to with them. And so you're navigating all of these things that most people do privately in a very public domain. You're, kind of not being honest with yourself in terms of the support that you need, because I was always found myself in a position of support, like I've been team captain or sort of leading the charge on certain things even outside of the pool. And, I didn't really feel like I had permission to ask for help. And so I didn't. And yeah, so I think, you live in that denial for a long time, because you think the strategies that you used previously to be successful or find your way through difficult times or adversity aren't the strategies that apply in, from a professional life to a personal life. And so, so I don't think I navigated that well for a long time. And you kind of want to hide from everything. If I could have been a recluse at that stage, which I couldn't in my life because I had so much stuff going on that I was still responsible for, I probably would have been. But then it's funny, because all of that adversity leads to a really honest conversation eventually about yourself and where you're at and what makes you who you are. And I'd almost wish I'd found that earlier in my life, because I think I would have been a better athlete. And it makes you a better, husband, father, person, friend. When you go through those difficult times and you work out what makes you tick, what you like, where your boundaries belong, where they don't belong, so it was a real eye opener. And I just had, as this psychologist said to me, she goes, "Oh, your problem's really easy." She goes, you just lack complete vulnerability. And I was like, yeah, maybe I do. She goes, "You find it hard to talk about this stuff. You kind of avoid it or have an answer for it." And I did. I had an answer for everything. And sometimes you don't need answers. Sometimes you just need to recognize that you're not good at something, and you've got to build that muscle. And even if you don't want to confront it, you've still got to take the time out. And, funnily enough, that time for me was probably living with Michael Phelps for almost a year.
Did you?
Yeah, with him and his family. And
he's one of the greats.
Yeah, well, he's the greatest. He sits on top of that medal count above anybody by a long way.
Still? Wow.
Well, he's got 23 Olympic gold medals. I think the next best would be Carl Lewis with 9, Usain Bolt with 8. And then it's a long tail after that.
How did you end up living with him?
We've always been really close friends.
Yeah.
So, when I went through, some of my stuff, he's been through his ups and downs, talks very openly about mental health. And he's been through some really tough times in his life. And so, he's a guy who gets it. And so when I was going through my tough time, he reached out to me. He said, come over here, man. Let's get out of there and come here. And I went there, and it was the best thing that I ever did.
Aww.
Sometimes you just need a change of environment too.
Yes,
Like that
circuit breaker.
yeah. And I didn't realize how there were so many eye-opening things which I wish I knew I would have done much earlier for myself. And it's funny, sometimes you've got to go through something enough times to realize, hey, there's got to be a different strategy. And I think for me, that's, as my wife says to me now, you'll keep getting this, the universe will keep giving you the same lesson unless you, finally learn it and change something. And so for me, all those things that I did, staying with him for some time, having honest conversations, being really open and honest about the way I felt for the first time and how it was impacting me and not having the answers to everything was, it was really confronting, but it was great, because then that sort of leads you to the next place in life, which, I don't know, hopefully, you're always trying to be a better human, and hopefully from that difficult period and from what I learned about myself, and you never got to right all the wrongs about you too. You realize the world's not fair, and that's the way it is. And, when they were writing about you when you were really good and doing everything perfect, that wasn't true either, because you're not that perfect human being on the other side of that success where everyone loves and adores at the time and thinks you can do no wrong. And that's just not the case. It's not real. And so, I mean, I kind of reflect on that, a very dark time in life, as something that probably, I don't know, needed to happen, but it did happen. I learnt heaps from it. I got a lot from it. And I think it's improved me as a person. So that's healthy.
We kind of talk to, as a mindset coach, when we go through these hard times, as you mentioned, you learn some new skills. So now you have the toolbox with those skills in them. So when another dark time arises, hopefully never as dark as what you experienced, but one will arise. It's just the nature of
inevitable.
life.
Yeah.
Happens to everyone. You can then take from that toolbox what you've learned, right?
Yeah.
Some people never learn those skills. I do this podcast so people can learn the techniques to be able to get over those hard times with, wisdom that we are both providing them. So I assume now, if anything gets a little bit tough for you, you've got that toolbox with you that you can use to be able to move through more challenging times.
Yes. And you have to be willing to open the toolbox.
Yes.
So I know it's there. I know what it takes. You fall back into old habits.
Of course.
And I'm a person that I've worked really hard and, break myself down sometimes through that work, which, you get better at seeing the signs, but you've got to know, when do you need to have a rest? When do you need to take a break? When do you need to say no? It's really important. So I find it easier to teach the tools than to use the ones that naturally don't come to me. And I always have to work on that all the time. I mean, even my wife will say to me, well done, you're being vulnerable. So she is trying to encourage it to come out, because it's not
natural.
Yeah, because I'm a person who wants to fight through. I want to get to this is adversity. I can overcome it if I fight harder. But sometimes fighting harder does the exact opposite of what you want it to do. It actually makes you slide more, where stopping, reassessing, having a break, pushing things back a little bit. Maybe that goal is not ready right now. Maybe it's there for you in 12 months' time. But if you don't achieve it right now, and if it's going to break you, then what's the point of it? So I think I'm really honest on these things. Yes, I've been taught the tools. I know how to use them. But I've still got this inbuilt, disposition that is who I am. So therefore I have to overcome that. And I find I do it much better now. And the older I get, I think the easier that becomes, but it's still a bit of a challenge. And it is really frustrating when you see other people that you want to help too, that don't necessarily open to using that just as yet. And, maybe it's like, when you bring up your kids, you want to be able to protect them from every battle or every hardship and do things for them. But sometimes people have got to slide and overcome their own challenges to grow.
Absolutely.
And that is a muscle that we all need.
Do you ever use, or have you used for swimming, or even just in your everyday, visualization?
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I teach people to do it, and I've done it
Yeah.
for myself for the last decade.
Mm.
Not to win any swimming races, but just in things that I want to achieve in my life. And I just find it unbelievably helpful.
Yeah. I think of every goal I've ever had, I think of what it's like to achieve that goal. And I kind of work back through the visualization of that, through what is the preparation, what does it look like to be successful. I mean, I don't sleep too much because I often am sitting there thinking of these things, and I'm thinking about what it feels like. And
Do you do it in meditation, or do you do it as just kind of in everyday life?
No, it's an everyday thing for
Yeah.
me. Like meditation I like doing. I find my mind can drift a little bit too much on meditation, but for me, visualization is a really natural part of my
Yeah.
day, and it's a
Because
natural.
I reckon you'd be laser focused too.
Yeah, yes,
You train yourself to be like that, but from what you've told me, your
Yeah.
personality lends itself to be very, very good at visualization.
yeah. I think to your point, I'm probably naturally in that lane, and then you get trained more and more of it, and doing what I did for so long as a young athlete and into an adult, you sort of just hardwired that way. So everything I think about now in business or what I'm trying to achieve in home life or fitness, like I visualize everything what I want it to look like. I probably do it too much, and I can fall into the emotion of what it actually feels like to have that outcome really quickly too. Like I can
That's
actually
the
feel
main part of visualization.
Yeah.
To be able to feel it, because actually visualizing it is not enough. You need to be able to feel what it would be like to have the outcome already and get yourself into that state. I love it.
Yeah, me too. Well, it's kind of worked for me,
Yeah.
for the most part anyway. But I feel like the visualization stuff. If something is really meaningful to you, I mean, you kind of obsess over it in a way where you can't help it. Like you're kind of thinking about what would that feel like, and if it's so deeply hardwired into your psyche and your emotions, then you kind of you get what it feels like. Like I can think of a million things that I've visualized that I've been fortunate enough to bring to life. A lot I haven't as well, but it's an awesome feeling. And I don't know. Yeah, I guess the visualization is a taste of that. So maybe does it give you the motivation to do all the work around it? Maybe, but it's part of the process, I think, in order to be successful.
The coolest part is when you actually, I always say it's like being awake in your dream, when you visualized it so much and then next minute you've done it. And you're like, I was imagining this for ages and here I am doing it. It happened to me with live shows that I started to do. And I would imagine like a packed theatre of people, doing the podcast in a live space. Yeah. And then last year, I was sitting in front of 1,500 people. And I thought, this is what I'd pictured in my mind. Yeah. Exactly the same.
Yeah.
Being awake in your dream.
It's exactly. It's a really good point because dreams feel so real, right?
Yeah.
Like they're your subconscious, and you feel like that's actually happening. And I think visualization, the closer you can get to that feeling, the more real that you're making it, and you're almost making it part of your psyche and your DNA. Like it's no matter what, you're going to get there.
Yeah.
And I find, I don't know, because it is so meaningful to you that you're feeling it so much, even before you've been able to achieve that level of success or that outcome or whatever it might be that you're trying to chase. It's a really powerful tool. But I also think people who can do it well, it's because what they're trying to do and what they're trying to achieve and where they're trying to go is just so deeply meaningful to them that it's just going to be a part of who they are.
I wonder, what is some of the best advice that you have ever been given?
It's funny. My coach always used to have this saying, and this is probably a little bit counterintuitive to some of the chat, but he was always like, bite off more than you can chew and start chewing. And so I always, because we always say don't bite off more than you can chew, but he was quite the opposite of that. And it's funny in life, I sometimes think we've just got to dive into things, even if we don't really know what we're doing or have the expertise or experience. You find the way through, and sometimes we put things off until we have all the answers. And honestly, anywhere I've gone in my life where I've had an opportunity to do something that I'm a little bit unsure of, or even, a lot of these events, when you're going to world championships and Olympics, all that stuff for the first time, you don't know what you're getting into. You don't realize how big it is and the stage and what it's like. Like you can't, as a 16 or 17-year-old really and fully appreciate that. So I've always liked that one. It always pops to mind when someone asks me that question. And, I've got a lot of sayings from my chairman. He says, when there's a problem, the problem's often you. So, and I like that one as well, because a lot of the time we complain about things we have power over and we can actually do something about. Or sometimes we're not addressing things, and that's how they became problems.
Yeah.
And probably in my position as CEO, you probably have the biggest license to do something about those problems. So, and that sounds like a harsh thing to say, but I think, it's coming from the right place, and it just means take action. So yeah, probably for me, anything that is a saying, I probably live by things that take action and be a bit more proactive is what I like to do.
And our final question: what is a life of greatness to you?
Oh, that's a good question. Follow whatever is meaningful to you. Like do what you think is going to give you the most joy in terms of the outcome, and be willing to go through the most pain in the process for that outcome. So it wouldn't have mattered how sick I got, how many shoulder surgeries I'd have to do to win an Olympic gold medal. It just meant the world to me. And I have no regrets about anything that I had to put in to achieve that. I would do more for it, in fact, knowing how good it felt to actually get that outcome finally. And so for other people, that wouldn't be worth anything. It wouldn't even be a paperweight, that gold medal. So, you got to find what gives you meaning in your life, and you don't have to have a reason why. Like, you don't have to understand, why do you like that? I don't know. Like, I don't know why I like the Olympics so much and the thought of winning that, or, and just being in that environment of the best and the best. Like, I don't know, why do I like finance and business so much? I'm not sure. I've just always been drawn to that. Even before I got serious about swimming, I've always enjoyed that, and always asked my dad questions about his mates who've been really successful in business or property development or other things. So for me, I've sort of worked out I don't really have reasons why I like those things, but I just do. And I think any life that you can follow something that you really love and enjoy, but you don't understand why, but it gives you meaning, I think follow that, and it'll never do you any wrong.
Grant Hackett, thank you for racing for the country and achieving everything that you have. You have an extraordinary mindset. It's been amazing to talk to you about it and hear what it took to, push through everything that you have. So thank you so much for the conversation today.
No, thanks for the chat. It was, it's funny. You don't realize how you feel about stuff until you say it out loud, and these sort of conversations certainly do that. So thank you.